The signal appeared on screens across southern Italy at exactly 9:03 in the morning. Not the sharp spike of a normal earthquake, but something seismologists had never seen before at Campi Flegrei. A prolonged rhythmic pulse that lasted over a minute. Within hours, the Vesuvius Observatory confirmed what residents of Pozzuoli were already feeling. The ancient volcanic caldera beneath their feet was not just moving, it was communicating. The January 14th swarm, magnitude 2.2 followed by 2.5, marked the 84th seismic event in 7 days. But recent breakthrough research reveals why this number is so terrifying. Each earthquake is part of a coupled system, where tremors and underground pressure waves feed off each other, growing stronger with every pulse. Scientists have discovered that Campi Flegrei operates like a massive geological organ pipe, with fractures and magma chambers creating resonance signals that can build for years before erupting in catastrophic harmony. This is the same system that once buried Europe in volcanic ash and potentially triggered the ice age that killed the Neanderthals. Today, that system sits beneath 500,000 people who go to sleep each night not knowing they are living inside an instrument of planetary destruction. And the rhythm it is playing is accelerating. The research is clear. When supervolcanoes start singing in harmony, they are not practicing. They are preparing for a performance that could rewrite the map of southern Europe. But here is the question keeping geologists awake at night. If Campi Flegrei is tuning up for its next symphony of destruction, how much time do we have before the music stops and the real show begins? To understand what's happening beneath Pozzuoli right now, you first need to understand what Campi Flegrei actually is. Because this isn't your typical volcano. There is no iconic cone rising against the skyline, no single crater to point to. Instead, there is something far more dangerous hiding in plain sight. An 8-mile-wide depression stretching from the suburbs of Naples into the Gulf of Pozzuoli. 24 craters and volcanic vents are scattered across a landscape that looks more like rolling farmland than a geological weapon. The ancient Greeks called it the Burning Fields. They believed it was the entrance to the underworld. Scientists at Stanford University now believe those myths were not far from the truth. Campi Flegrei is what volcanologists call a nested caldera, a volcanic structure so massive it collapsed into itself not once but twice after emptying the magma chambers beneath. The first collapse happened about 39,000 years ago in what researchers call the Campanian ignimbrite eruption. It was the largest volcanic explosion Europe has seen in 200,000 years. The numbers are staggering. That single event ejected between 250 and 300 cubic kilometers of material, enough to bury an area of 1.4 million square miles under volcanic ash. The eruption column punched through the atmosphere, and the resulting volcanic winter may have dropped global temperatures by up to 9 degrees Celsius in some regions. But here is the twist that makes this ancient catastrophe relevant today. That eruption happened right around the time Neanderthals began their final decline across Europe. While scientists debate whether Campi Flegrei delivered the killing blow or merely accelerated an extinction already in progress, the timing is haunting. One study from the University of Reading found that fluorine-laden ash from the eruption could have caused fluorosis in any hominids who ate contaminated plants, a condition that damages eyes, teeth, and internal organs. The second major eruption, the Neapolitan Yellow Tuff event, about 15,000 years ago, ejected another 40 cubic kilometers of material and created the caldera structure we see today. And since then, the system has not truly gone quiet, it has simply been breathing. Since Roman times, the ground at Campi Flegrei has been rising and falling in a phenomenon scientists call bradyseism, from the Greek words meaning slow and movement. The famous pillars of the Temple of Serapis in Pozzuoli have served as unintentional measuring sticks for centuries. boreholes left by marine organisms on the marble columns reveal that the location sank 11 meters below sea level by 1000 CE, then rose 12 meters by 1538. That 12 meters of uplift was not gradual. Historical records show that in the decades before 1538, residents of Pozzuoli watched in confusion as the shoreline retreated. New land emerged from the sea. Wells changed temperature. The ground rumbled with increasing frequency. Then, on September the 29th, 1538, the earth tore open. Over 7 days, a new mountain rose from nothing. Monte Nuovo, known as the New Mountain, climbed 130 meters above the landscape. It was the first eruption witnesses had documented in modern times. 24 people who climbed the newly formed cone on October the 6th lost their lives when a final explosion caught them on the slopes. After 1538, Campi Flegrei fell quiet. The ground slowly sank again at a rate of about 13 millimeters per year. For 400 years, the dragon slept. Then, in the 1950s, something changed. A new phase of unrest began. The ground started rising again. Moderate uplift from 1950 to 1951 was followed by more significant activity from 1969 to 1972, when the caldera floor rose approximately 1.5 meters. But nothing prepared scientists or residents for what happened next. Between 1982 and 1984, Campi Flegrei entered its most intense period of unrest since the Monte Nuovo eruption. The ground rose more than 6 feet so quickly that Pozzuoli's harbour became too shallow for ships to dock. Over 16,000 earthquakes shook the region. Buildings cracked and collapsed. According to researchers at Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, more than 40,000 people were evacuated from Pozzuoli. Many never returned. They were permanently relocated to a new district called Monterascello, built on what authorities hoped was safer ground, though it still sits within the caldera's boundaries. After 1984, the system deflated again. Scientists exhaled. The crisis had passed, or so they thought. What came next shifted the entire conversation. In 2005, after 2 decades of relative calm, Campi Flegrei began rising again. At first, the uplift was slow, a few centimeters per year, but starting in 2018, seismicity increased dramatically. Then in 2021, something new appeared in the data. Researchers from Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology identified burst-like seismic swarms, rapid sequences of earthquakes occurring at such short intervals that individual events became difficult to distinguish on seismograms. These were not random tremors, they were patterns, and they were getting more intense. By 2024, the caldera had risen approximately 1.4 meters since 2005. In May of that year, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake struck, the largest ever instrumentally recorded at Campi Flegrei. It damaged dozens of buildings west of the epicenter and forced evacuations. Just weeks later, on June the 30th, 2024, an even stronger magnitude 4.6 earthquake hit, setting a new record. In a single month during this period, monitoring stations recorded 2,500 earthquakes. But here is what keeps scientists up at night. New AI-powered detection systems, developed by Stanford University in collaboration with the Vesuvius Observatory, have revealed the true scale of what is happening. Previous monitoring tools had identified roughly 12,000 earthquakes between 2022 and 2025. The new AI approach detected more than 54,000. 4 times as many earthquakes as anyone knew about, happening beneath a city. And then came the discovery that changed everything. In a study published in July 2025 in Communications, Earth and Environment, Researchers announced they had found something never before detected at Campi Flegrei, very long period seismic signals called VLP signals. These are not ordinary earthquake signatures. They are resonance signals, oscillations lasting 60 to 90 seconds, with a dominant frequency of 0.11 Hz, coming from a crack-like structure nearly 1 kilometer long, buried 3.6 kilometers beneath the surface. The researchers interpreted these signals as evidence of a fluid-filled fracture connecting the deep magma source to the solfatara fumaroles at the surface. When earthquakes strike, this underground structure vibrates like a tuning fork, or, as the research suggests, like a massive geological organ pipe. The June 30th magnitude 4.6 earthquake triggered a clear VLP signal from this fracture. The system did not just shake, it resonated. According to the study authors, this confirms that the mechanical stress, pressurized fluid pathways, and brittle fault zones beneath Campi Flegrei are now interacting in ways never before directly measured. The caldera is not just experiencing isolated earthquakes, it is operating as a fully coupled system, where tremors and underground pressure waves feed off each other. The last time a caldera system showed this level of interconnected activity before an eruption, it did not end well. Before the 1538 Monte Nuovo eruption, historical records describe decades of warning signs that modern scientists can now recognize as the same phenomena currently accelerating at Campi Flegrei. Starting in 1502, residents noted that the shoreline was retreating as new land emerged from the sea. By the 1530s, unusual seismicity had begun, reaching a first climax in 1534. On September 28, 1538, the day before the eruption, about 20 tremors shook the region between daybreak and nightfall. Then the earth split open. Contemporary accounts describe the initial hours as a nightmare. Pyroclastic flows, superheated currents of gas, ash and rock, swept outward from the vent. The medieval village of Tripagole, which had stood on the shores of Lake Lucrino since Roman times and was home to Cicero's villa, was completely buried. Its ruins have never been found. Ash fell as far as Apulia and Calabria, hundreds of kilometers away. Larger fragments rained down on the Vesuvian region across the bay. Now imagine that happening today. Over 500,000 people live within Campi Flegrei's designated red zone, the area that would need to be evacuated before an eruption for residents to survive. An additional 800,000 people live within the broader caldera boundaries. The city of Naples, home to 3 million more, sits immediately adjacent to the eastern edge. Italy's Civil Protection Agency has developed an evacuation plan that calls for moving 500,000 people in 72 hours. But local officials and scientists have expressed concern about whether the road infrastructure can handle such intense traffic. The plan assumes authorities will have 3 days of warning, a prediction that many volcanologists are no longer confident they can guarantee. 72 hours. That is all 500,000 people might get. The Italian government has allocated €500 million for evacuation preparations and structural interventions, including strengthening buildings damaged by the ongoing seismic activity. In October 2024, authorities conducted Campi Flegrei 2024, a simulated emergency evacuation involving residents from 7 municipalities in the red zone. Participants received test YT alert messages on their phones, and volunteer citizens were transported by bus from waiting areas to meeting points. But the test was voluntary and the roads were clear. In a real emergency, with pyroclastic flows potentially travelling at 30 to 60 miles per hour, at temperatures of 1,472 degrees Fahrenheit, Giovanni Macedonio, director of the Vesuvius Observatory, has stated bluntly that within the red zone there are no countermeasures. You either evacuate in time or you do not survive. The current official alert level remains yellow, requiring close observation but no immediate danger. The next level, orange, would trigger evacuation of hospitals and encourage voluntary departure. Only a red alert, issued when phenomena indicate pre-eruptive dynamics, would activate complete evacuation. But scientists at Stanford and the Vesuvius Observatory emphasize that the current unrest shows no signs of slowing. The ground continues rising at approximately 2 centimeters per month in some areas. Gas emissions, particularly carbon dioxide, have accelerated dramatically. The fumarolic field at Pisciarelli has expanded visibly since 2016. Photographs from the site show what was once a small natural spring pool, transformed into a broad water-filled basin with wooden fence posts submerged underwater. One study, published in 2025 in Nature Geoscience, found that sulfur emissions are becoming isotopically lighter, a signature that researchers interpret as coming from deeper, hotter sources. The system is not cooling down, it is connecting more directly to what lies beneath. An eruption at Campi Flegrei would not just devastate the Naples metropolitan area, it would trigger a cascade of failures reaching far beyond Italy's borders. Giovanni Macedonio of the Vesuvius Observatory has said that a major eruption could generate an eruptive column reaching 18 miles high, dispersing ash across vast distances. Depending on wind patterns, that ash could ground air traffic across Europe and potentially other parts of the world. The 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption in Iceland, a far smaller event, stranded 10 million passengers and cost the airline industry an estimated $1.7 billion. A Campi Flegrei eruption on the scale of the Neapolitan Yellow Tuff event 15,000 years ago would dwarf that disruption by orders of magnitude. Then there is the infrastructure beneath the caldera itself. The region hosts critical utilities, hospitals, transportation networks, and economic centres serving millions. A major hospital is currently under construction within the caldera boundaries. Supply chains running through one of Europe's most important port regions would collapse overnight. Unlike Vesuvius, whose iconic cone provides visual warning and clear direction for evacuation, Campi Flegrei's threat is largely invisible. The caldera spans 8 miles with no single vent to watch. An eruption could theoretically occur at any of dozens of locations, including underwater vents in the Gulf of Pozzuoli. Add to that the ripple effects on global food supplies. If sustained, ashfall damages agriculture across the Mediterranean, potential climate impacts from sulfur dioxide injected into the atmosphere, and the economic shock of displacing millions of people from one of Europe's most densely populated regions. It is not just local. It is the kind of event that could reshape global priorities overnight, all triggered by a system most people do not even know exists. Campi Flegrei does not look like a volcano. It looks like home to 500,000 people. It looks like narrow streets lined with pomegranate trees, fishermen casting nets in the harbour, children walking to school past the ruins of Roman temples that have watched the ground rise and fall for 2,000 years. That's what makes it so dangerous. Scientists at the Vesuvius Observatory, Stanford University, and the GFZ Helmholtz Center in Germany say the system is inflating, the seismicity is accelerating, and for the first time ever, they have detected resonance signals from a pressurized fracture connecting on the magma source to the surface. The only unknown is when. It could be decades away. Or it could begin tomorrow with a swarm of earthquakes that do not stop, and a rhythm that builds until the instrument beneath their feet finally plays its final note. And if it happens, the 500,000 people in the red zone will have 72 hours to outrun something that travels at highway speeds and burns hotter than any fire humans have ever survived. So here is the question. If you lived on top of a geological organ pipe, that has been tuning up for 20 years, would you know when to leave? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you stay or go if you lived in Pozzuoli? If you want to see what scientists are really worried about with Europe's other sleeping giants, make sure you are subscribed and hit that bell. Earth Attacks does not wait for the mainstream news to catch up. Sometimes the most dangerous places on Earth look exactly like paradise until they do not.